Hi there, everyone, and welcome to the Daily Gardener, and thank you for listening. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling. It's December 17th. Today we celebrate one of the world's best composers and his intense appreciation of nature. We'll also learn about the botanist who cracked the code on pollinating vanilla and came up with a new word for the cyclical nature of things. We'll recognize the incredible work of a daughter of Indiana. And yes, she is famous. And we grow that garden library with something light and enjoyable, a New York Times best-selling fiction novel from 2012. And then we'll wrap things up with a little mistletoe history that's sure to leave an impression. It's not about kissing, but it will definitely give you something to talk about around the dinner table over Christmas break. But first, I just wanted to take a second to tell you about the Daily Gardener Friday newsletter. Each and every Friday, even when the show is on break, subscribers to the newsletter get an exclusive email from me with some super useful content, including helpful reminders and tips for the week to help you grow as a gardener, a handy list of the featured books for the week from the Grow That Garden Library segment of the podcast. That's so handy. You'll also get a brand new botanist profile and a few hand-picked pieces of botanical poetry that haven't been shared on the show yet. You'll receive plenty of trending garden-inspired recipes, gifts, and hacks. And finally, I like to make the newsletter a little more personal. So you'll see photos and stories about my own home and garden, in addition to exclusive updates about the show. It's a little behind-the-scenes VIP experience for super fans of the podcast. Don't forget that each week, one lucky subscriber will be chosen as a winner for a lovely gardening book from the Grow That Garden Library bookshelf. If you enjoy the podcast, you're going to love the newsletter. So head on over to thedailygardener.org and sign up for the free Friday newsletter today. Here's today's curated garden news. Today's article was written by Sophie Morren Smith, and it was featured in Gardening, Etc. The title of the post is 5 Low-Maintenance Annuals for Your Garden. Let me share with you the 5 annuals that Sophie featured in her post. And then if you want to read Sophie's article in more detail, you can do that over in the Facebook group for the show. So her 5 annuals include the poppy, Love in a Mist or Nigella, Larkspur, the sweet little viola, and snapdragons, one of my favorite. So there you go, 5 low-maintenance annuals for your garden. And if you'd like to check out this post in more detail, all you need to do is head on over to the free Facebook group for the show, the Daily Gardener Community. And once you're there, just type in the word annual and Sophie's post will pop right up. So there's no need for you to take notes or search for links. The next time you're on Facebook, just search for Daily Gardener Community, where you'd search for a friend and request to join. I'd love to meet you in the group. Here's today's brevities. Today is the baptism day of the German composer and pianist Ludwig van Beethoven, who was baptized on this day, December 17th, in 1770. Beethoven grew up loving nature. Living along the Rhine, little Ludwig would take walks with his father. Beethoven turned to nature for inspiration when he wrote his Sixth Symphony, which is why the subtitle for the Sixth Symphony is called Pastoral. After coming up with the idea that each movement would reflect a complete day in the country from sunrise to sunset, Beethoven composed this piece to imitate nature. In his music notes, Beethoven even added little headlines like storm or scene at a brook to make certain that the musicians understood the link between the notes they were playing and nature. Once, while walking with a friend, Beethoven pointed at the water and said, "Here I composed the scene by the brook, and the yellowhammers up there, the quails, nightingales, and cuckoos round about, composed with me." And Beethoven wanted the listeners of his music to recognize the powerful link between nature and our feelings. As Beethoven sought out nature to inspire his Sixth Symphony, at one point he simply wrote, "Effect on the soul," in his notes. And it was at the beautiful manor house named Dolna Krupa where Beethoven is presumed to have written his Moonlight Sonata. 100 years after Beethoven's stay, the Countess Maria Henrietta Chotek, known as the Countess of Roses, established Dolna Krupa's rose collection as one of the top 3 rose gardens in the world. And here's a fun side note about Beethoven. His last name is a combination of beet, which translates to beet as in the vegetable, and hoven, which means farm. So the blended meaning of Beethoven's last name is beet farm. And today is the anniversary of the death of the Belgian botanist and horticulturist and director of the Botanical Garden at Liège, Charles Francois Antoine Morren, who died on this day, December 17th, in 1858. Charles made some very significant contributions to botany. First, Charles discovered how vanilla was pollinated. Prior to Charles Morren, the pollination of vanilla was a mystery. And although Hernan Cortés brought vanilla to Europe, for 300 years, no one knew how to pollinate the flower. Charles discovered that it was a native bee of Mexico, the Melipona bee, a social and stingless bee that was the only pollinator for vanilla. Like monarchs and milkweed, the Melipona bee and vanilla co-evolved. And at the same time Charles discovered the bee, the Museum of Paris came up with a way to pollinate vanilla by hand using a blade of grass or a pointed stick like a toothpick. Today, almost all vanilla is pollinated by hand using this method. In addition to discovering how vanilla was pollinated, Charles Morren coined the term phenology. Derived from a Greek word that means to show or make to appear, phenology is the study of cyclic and seasonal natural phenomena, especially in relation to climate and plant and animal life. Gardeners who keep a phenological journal record the first and last days of events in the garden. For example, the first snow, the first robin, the first frog, etc. In 1849, Charles used the term during a lecture at the Academy of Brussels. 4 years later, Belgium had an unseasonably warm winter, which prompted Charles to write a paper called The Phenological Memories of the Winter of 1852 to 1853. In the paper, Charles describes how plants responded to the unusual weather that winter. Finally, Charles and his son wrote 35 volumes of an exceptionally beautiful journal that shared the beauty of horticulture in Belgium. All the 35 volumes of the Belgium Horticulture are available digitally for free at the Biodiversity Heritage Library, and I've shared a link to it in the Facebook group of the show. And today is the birthday of the Indiana environmentalist, newspaper columnist, and author Rachel Pede, who was born on this day, December 17th, in 1901. Rachel was the wife of an Owen County cattle farmer named Dick. Her father, Benjamin Franklin Mason, was a fruit farmer, growing peaches, apples and strawberries. Ben developed a reputation as a breeder when he created a peach called the Shipper's Late Red. Rachel often referred to her dad as the orchardist in her writing. A self-described Hoosier farm wife, Rachel's byline was Mrs. RFD for Rural Free Delivery, and her longtime columns in the Indianapolis Star and the Muncie Evening News charmed her readers with stories about nature and farm life. And yes, Rachel loved to garden. She wrote, "I love the therapy of working in the garden and the acquaintance of my neighbors from the natural world that I meet there." When I was researching Rachel, I stopped to read her memorial on Find a Grave, and I'm not sure who wrote it, but I loved their appeal to the folks at Find a Grave. They wrote, "Find a Grave has determined that Rachel does not meet their criteria for being famous, but they are wrong." The author of 3 books published by Knopf Publishing, Rachel wrote Rural Free, a farm wife's almanac of country living in 1961, The Land, the People in 1966, one of my favorites, and it earned her the Indiana University Authors Award, and finally Speak to the Earth, which was released in 1974. Keep Rachel's love and awe for the natural world in mind as you listen to this excerpt from The Land, the People. Snow was falling as if from a coarse sifter being turned from very high above the earth. It had been going on a long time. Leafless trees were whitened. Weeds and tangled raspberry canes in the garden had become a great heap of foamy white lace. A sparrow created a miniature snowstorm when he alighted on a delicate peach twig. The twig quivered under his weight. The sparrow rose. Snowflakes sparkled and fell on the snow-toppled woodpile under the peach tree. And Rachel wrote one of my favorite quotes about summer and roses. Here's what she wrote. "The serene philosophy of the pink rose is steadying. Its fragrant, delicate petals open fully and are ready to fall without regret or disillusion after only a day in the sun. It is so every summer. One can almost hear their pink, fragrant murmur as they settle down upon the grass. Summer, summer. It will always be summer." In Unearthed Words, today's words are from the American writer and author Jean Hersey from her book called The Shape of a Year, another one of my favorites. And this piece is from her chapter called December. "The garden is completely winterized, except for the roses, which need more hay, and the 4 small box, yet to be covered with burlap. We have a sentimental feeling for these box. Once, many years ago, on a holiday with the children, we were driving to North Carolina. We stopped at Mount Vernon and bought 4 seedlings, cuttings of George Washington's original box hedge. They were 25 cents a piece, and now they are nearly 2 feet tall. Every fall, Bob builds a little covered patio of burlap around each one. Isn't that sweet? It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, The Language of Flowers by Vanessa Diffenbaugh. This book came out in 2012, and this is a fictional novel. And Vanessa's book was a New York Times bestseller, and it features the Victorian language of flowers. This is one of the books I always keep on the nightstand in our guest bedroom back in the days when we had guests. Anyway, the Amazon description of this book says, the Victorian language of flowers was used to convey romantic expressions, honeysuckle for devotion, asters for patience, and red roses for love. But for Victoria Jones, it's been more useful in communicating mistrust and solitude. After a childhood spent in the foster care system, she is unable to get close to anybody, and her only connection to the world is through flowers and their meanings. Now 18 and emancipated from the system with nowhere to go, Victoria realizes she has a gift for helping others through the flowers she chooses for them. But an unexpected encounter with a mysterious stranger has her questioning what's been missing in her own life. And when she's forced to confront a painful secret from her past, she must decide whether it's worth risking everything for a second chance at happiness. This book is 334 pages of garden-inspired fiction featuring newfound love as well as heartache. You can get a copy of The Language of Flowers by Vanessa Diffenbaugh and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for around $1. That's what the used copies are going for. And that's what makes this book one of my Secret Santa specials for this holiday season. I mean, come on, it's $1. All right, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. It was on this day, December 17th in 1948, that the Kansas City Times shared a story about mistletoe. Now, mistletoe is a common name of hemiparasitic plants in the order of Santalales. Mistletoe actually attached to a host tree or shrub by a structure called the haustorium. Then the mistletoe extracts water and nutrients from the host plant. And apparently, back in 1948, young boys used to shoot mistletoe down from the trees. Here's what this little article in the Kansas City Times wrote. Here's an excerpt. The Druids of early English history made a great ceremony of cutting the mistletoe. After a sacrifice, the arch-druid cut the mistletoe out of an oak tree with a golden knife, taking care that it did not touch the ground, and carried it away in a white cloth. The South Missouri youth use a squirrel rifle instead of a golden knife, and would as soon shoot mistletoe garland out of a pecan tree as an oak. If he is lucky enough to catch it before it hits the ground, his object is to keep the berries from shattering. Why? Because the spray with the most berries will bring the greatest returns, either commercially at the florists or personally elsewhere. And it turns out there's historical precedence for his method of gathering mistletoe. In Switzerland, it has been the custom to shoot mistletoe down with a bow and arrow, catching it with the left hand as it falls. In Sweden, it must be shot out of a red oak, and a similar custom prevailed in Wales until the early part of the 19th century. Who knew? Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener, and remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced in lovely Wyoming, Minnesota with the help of Paige Mance, Brooke Bierbaum, Kiana Rayleigh, Maddie Doyle, Natalie Decker, and Eric Begay. You can find The Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media. You can follow the show on Instagram, and listeners always have a standing invitation to join the free Facebook group for the show. Just search for Daily Gardener Community the next time you're on Facebook and request to join. All the stories stories and books that are featured on the show can be found over at thedailygardener.org, thedailygardener.org. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for my free Friday newsletter. Last but not least, you can share your own gardener greetings on the show by emailing me at jennifer@thedailygardener.org. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and as always, have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.